carrying on from that last video regarding Excel, I've come into a revised summary. This is the scenario that's occurred where they've come back to me and they've said to me they do want labour and sundries. So where I've built that redundancy in, or that future-proof capacity, call it what you will, I've been able to introduce the cost of, say, the DPC in that description, and the £5 labour and the £5.50 supply equates to £10.50. So if we look at one of the bills and look at the 450 perimeter, there's your £10.50. So that's where the future proofing comes in. It's quite handy. Also, if you're told you're a little bit heavy on the rates and you want to drop a couple of quid off here and there, I mean, you can go through and you can just nick two quid off that rate. Sorry, I've got these sheets protected so that people I send them to can't inadvertently corrupt the data. So just unprotect the sheet. So if I wanted to just shave a couple of quid off everywhere, that 300mm splash is now 53, and you'll find that because I've used VLOOKUP, that 300mm splash is the same on every single bill. 53. Splash there, 53. And if I go back and put it back how it was, 48 and 8, you can see it's gone back up to 56. There it is, 56, 56, 56. So how do we get this to work like this? Well, as I explained before, VLOOKUP is explicit. So that's why these descriptions in these columns need to be identical on each bill page. So when I create this list, I basically do it by copying all of those, making a new list, and I just go through and I'll just get rid of the duplicates and the gaps, and I will tidy up each description so that it's more meaningful. And as I said, we name that list by defining it, which I've already shown you how to do. So that was just an example of how you create this list. So we've created this list. How do we make sure that this marries with the descriptions in my bills? And the way we do that is, as I've shown you before, we highlight that column so it's completely highlighted, and then we go up the top in Excel and we go to data and we pick the data validation menu option. What this will give you is a dialog box. So what you need to do here is you need to tell Excel that the only thing that's allowed in this column are things off the list, and you have to tell it what list you mean. So I've told it can only be things from a list, and that list is here. You can see there it's labours and rates tab, and it's A to A, all the way from top to bottom. Done. Okay. So now when you go back to the sheet, you'll only be able to put things from that list in there. It just won't make sense otherwise. So if I try to change that to say air brick, won't let me because it doesn't exist. So that kind of ensures consistency throughout. And the reason that's important is because of lookup. As I said, lookup is very, very explicit in what it requires to make the calculations happen. So with lookup, I'll explain as best I can how that works. So what we do is the column we want our rate in, if we examine that expression there, you'll see what this means is I want Excel to VLOOKUP, that's vertical lookup, the description that's in column B12 in the Labours and Rates tab from column A to F and return what's in column F and return what's in column F only. So you notice, because I didn't complete the expression, it's given me an error because half of the expression is missing, or it's incorrect, it's invalid. So if we look at a proper expression, so what this says again is I want Excel to VLOOKUP whatever's in B14 from the Labours and Rates tabs from column A to F, and I want you to return the figure that's in column 6 on the Labours and Rates tab in column A to F, and only. The 0 means only. It has to be exactly that. If you leave that off and there's a slight difference between, say you've got 100mm block and then 100mm block work with two different rates, it will bring the first one across, it won't bring the exact one across, if that makes sense. So that's why it has to be explicit. And so we go ahead and we say equals VLOOKUP, open parentheses, click on B, it's populated that with B12, put in a comma, go to the sheet you want it to look up for party walls, tell it the columns you want it to search in, comma, tell it the column you want to return, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. F is the 6th column. Put in another comma and tell it only that it has to be explicitly what's in that column. And this is what they call Boolean data. 0 is true, and false is an exact match, which is 0. So Boolean 0 is false and 1 is true. So that's a bit of a programming term, but put in 0, close the brackets, and you'll notice that the VLOOKUP's brought that formula across. And then what you do is you say for your total for this bill, you put your formula in there, so it equals the sum of whatever's in the rate column times the quantity column, and it gives you your figure. And then what you can then do is go, I always build in an extra column. So technically that formula I gave you there wasn't correct. What I should have said to you was equals the sum of M and N, even though N's blank, that's future proofing it for further manipulation should you ever need it in the future. Close the brackets, then times the quant. So what this is saying is add up M and N and times it by J. Done. So you're getting your rate from Labours and Rates, column F, and you're getting your bill value from the formula M plus N times J gives you that. Why this speeds things up is because, as I said, you've made sure that this is pretty explicit and they're all exactly the same, so there's no confusion from bill to bill by making sure you've picked it from the list. And what's speedy about that is you can actually basically just copy all of those cells and just go right the way down the list, holding control, pasting in the cell where you want the formula to sit and carry out its work. And it will automatically input all of those, as you know how Excel works. If there's any problems, you'll get an error message with there'll be a value symbol with an exclamation mark telling you that something somewhere is not quite right. And what that usually tends to be is you may have forgotten to times that by the 2.2, so consequently there's nothing in there. If we take that out of there, say, you should get an error. On this occasion it hasn't, but trust me, you will get an error as you go through that. So I know that's a lot to take in, so you might want to watch this a couple of times to get the gist of it, but that will save you an awful lot of work going through each one of these bills, putting through in the rate, making sure the rates are consistent and the adding up's consistent. Do's and don'ts, I can't think of any offhand, but just be careful. Sometimes these columns from bill to bill where you've manipulated them might not be exact. So you can't, for instance, take the formulas from plot 8 and 9 tab and go in and paste it in this tab, 11 and 15, say, because the expressions are built on specific columns and they all relate to each other. I'm sure you all know how Excel works, but if you get errors, they're the kinds of things you need to look for correcting. Make sure that everything on every tab is uniform. But it's no hardship to just go in and do the VLOOKUP expression on each tab. As long as you're not having to do it against every single item on every tab, that's where the labour comes into it. But doing it once at the top and cutting and pasting using control right the way down gives you that speed and that convenience. Hopefully that makes sense. As I say, watch it a couple of times if you need to, but that's basically how we end up with a finished document that you can come back to and edit and shave and play around with until you're happy with it. So there's my summary, and once I'm done I'll just stick my qualifications on there, save it, and you're done. You've got a bill to send off to your client, and you've also got a copy of what you've marked up. Each plot's the same, so say you win the job, you've got the value of that plot in its own tab. You can then just go ahead and do your splits. Also, if you win the job and you've got to work out your ties, your damps, you can produce shopping lists from these bills straight out the summary because you have it all to hand. I mean, obviously you'll have to do some more manipulation by adding columns into these, but you'll do that once you've won the job. So hopefully that all makes some sense. As I say, a couple of goes should sink in, and if you're an Excel whiz, which I'm not, you should find that quite a breeze.